Hi, I'm Jake, 32, and last month my life blew up when my older brother Marcus announced he was foreclosing on my farm, by court order, like some villain in a legal drama who couldn't wait to see the underdog lose. Only thing was, I wasn't the underdog. Not anymore. He slapped the paperwork on my kitchen table like it was a trophy and said, "The farm's going to foreclosure auction. Should have paid back Dad's loan when you had the chance." My mother stood behind him, smug, arms crossed like she'd waited her whole life for this moment. She'll finally learn some responsibility. She whispered to my Aunt Patricia, who nodded solemnly like this was some kind of divine reckoning. Maybe losing everything will teach her what we couldn't. They had driven 3 hours from the city just to do this in person. To watch me fall. What they didn't know was that this struggling farm they thought they were about to seize was the exclusive produce supplier to 12 Michelin-starred restaurants, and pulled in more revenue annually than Marcus's law firm would see in a decade. They were trying to repossess a $6 million agricultural empire over a supposed $47,000 debt. A debt that never existed. My mother, Linda, declared she was the executor of my father's estate and authorized Marcus to collect the money he'd given me 6 years ago, a $35,000 investment my dad had called a gift. No loan agreement. No paperwork. Just a dad who believed in his daughter. "You chose to play in the dirt instead of building a real career," Mom said coldly. "Now you'll see what happens when fantasy meets reality." She'd said stuff like that all my life. I could have argued. I could have shown them client contracts, invoices, product waiting lists. But I knew they wouldn't listen. They never had. Instead, I just said, "The assessor comes Friday?" Marcus smirked. "Friday morning, 9 sharp. Great. I'll see you then." They walked out of my house so confident in their win, so convinced that they were watching the final act of my little dream collapse. What they didn't realize was that Friday morning would be the start of their education. And class was going to be brutal. Friday morning, 8:30 a.m. Marcus showed up dressed like he was heading to a corporate deposition instead of a farm. Crisp navy suit, perfectly shined shoes, the kind that would be ruined the moment he stepped in a puddle. Mom wore a pale blouse and heels. On a farm. I don't know if she thought this was a funeral or a photo op, but she came ready to pose over the ashes of what she assumed was my failed little hobby. They brought my Aunt Patricia along too, probably as a witness to the humiliation. I half expected a camera crew. At 9 o'clock sharp, a dusty gray sedan with a county seal pulled into my gravel driveway. Out stepped Thomas Brennan, clipboard in one hand, camera in the other, and an expression that said, "I've been doing this job since before you were born, don't waste my time." "Miss Delacruz?" he asked. "That's me," I said. "Come on in." Marcus was already in lawyer mode. "This is approximately 40 acres. Modest facilities. Original farmhouse, some outbuildings. Basic irrigation. I've done some research. Comparable land around here goes for about $8,000 an acre. Should be a quick and straightforward process." Thomas blinked once. Then turned to me. "And you are?" "Marcus Delacruz. Legal representative of the estate." Thomas made a note on his clipboard. "I'll be conducting a full valuation. These things take several hours." Marcus scoffed. "Hours?" Thomas didn't even look at him. "Agricultural properties require thorough inspection. I'll need to evaluate soil quality, water access, environmental control systems, specialized equipment." He paused, staring at the line of greenhouses behind me. "Those structures. They climate controlled?" "Yes," I said. "All 12 of them. I'll need access to each." Marcus, clearly irritated, muttered something about plastic and pipes. But Thomas was already walking toward the fields like he smelled something expensive. Over the next 4 hours, Thomas transformed. At first, he was clinical, detached, taking notes and photos. But then he started asking questions. "Real ones? Are those nutrient film technique beds?" "Yes." "Vertical towers in house 6? "Correct." "Is that, wait, are you growing sikkim cucumbers?" "Among other things," I said, unlocking a climate pod. He crouched down, touched the soil with 2 fingers, and whistled. "This isn't just a farm. This is controlled environment agriculture." "Who designed the systems?" "I did." He blinked. "You designed all of this?" I nodded. That's when he started making calls. Quiet, urgent ones. I couldn't hear much, but I saw his hand gestures, the way he kept walking back to areas he'd already examined, the way his tone changed from curiosity to urgency. Meanwhile, Marcus kept checking his watch like he had dinner reservations. "Is this really necessary?" he asked at one point. "It's just vegetables." Thomas didn't even answer. He was inside one of the pods examining a rack of heirloom lettuces like he just discovered the Ark of the Covenant. Eventually, he asked to see my office. "I'd like to review your client contracts, if you don't mind." "I don't mind at all." That's when the panic truly began, for them. Because the moment Thomas opened that folder, his eyebrows went up and stayed up. Page 1, Green Fork, New York City. Page 2, Seaside, Boston. Page 3, Harvest Moon, Philly. And it just kept going. 13 Michelin-starred restaurants? He asked. 14, actually. Lumiere in Baltimore just earned one last month. He stared at the pages like they were ancient scrolls. "I need to make a call," he said, already heading back outside, phone in hand, voice low and urgent. Marcus leaned toward the folder. "What's in there?" "My client list." "Let me see." "No. You don't get to see anything. You came here to steal my farm. That doesn't come with privileges." His face tightened, but he didn't argue. Thomas came back 10 minutes later with a look on his face like he'd just spoken to the governor. "We'll need additional time to assess the value," he said, professionally calm. "Preliminary estimate puts the property between 4 and 6 million. Could go higher depending on proprietary assets." Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. "Mom?" She finally looked nervous. But I wasn't done. I turned to both of them, smiled just slightly, and said, "You wanted proof. Now you've got it." Marcus went pale. 4 to 6 million? He opened his mouth like he was about to argue with the concept of math itself, but nothing came out. Just the sound of his pride popping like a balloon. My mother didn't even pretend anymore. She stared at the ground like it might suddenly open up and swallow her. Thomas, still calm, went on. "Miss Delacroix's annual revenue exceeds 2 million. Her contracts guarantee long-term income. The infrastructure here is not standard. It's commercial grade. Her proprietary seed stock alone likely carries significant value in agricultural markets." Then he added, "Because at this point, why not twist a knife? This is one of the most advanced specialty farms I've evaluated in 23 years. He handed me a copy of the notes he'd be submitting to the court and nodded politely. "You'll be receiving formal documentation in the next few days. The foreclosure action is likely to be dismissed outright." And with that, he left. The moment his car turned down the road, Marcus jumped into damage control. "This doesn't change the fact that the loan still exists," he snapped. "We can negotiate terms, maybe establish a repayment schedule." I didn't move. "There was no loan," I said flatly. "There never was. And since you didn't bother to check your own father's estate records, allow me." I walked to my file cabinet, pulled out the folder I'd had waiting for this exact moment, and handed it over. "Dad's journals. March 15th entry. Read it out loud." Marcus hesitated. "Read it." He opened the journal, eyes scanning the page. His voice faltered as he read. "Gave Sophie $35,000 today. Told her it was an investment in her dream, not a loan. Linda will be furious, but I believe in this girl. She's going to prove them all wrong." He stopped reading. His hands were shaking. "These journals were included in the estate. You had access to them. You just didn't bother. Or maybe you didn't want to know." I snatched the journal back. "I'll be submitting this as evidence to the court." "Your debt claim?" "It's dead. And filing false claims can carry legal consequences, Marcus. You might want to read up on that." He looked like he was going to throw up. I turned to my mother. "You sent your son to steal my livelihood under the guise of teaching me a lesson. You called my dream a fantasy. You said I'd chosen dirt over dignity. Well, Mom, turns out dirt pays better than you thought." She opened her mouth, but I kept going. "You never once asked what I was building here. Never visited. Never picked up a phone unless it was to criticize or offer advice. You didn't want me to succeed. You wanted me to come crawling back. I was trying to help." She tried quietly. "No. You were trying to control. And when you couldn't, you tried to punish me for being independent. You used Dad's death to take a swing at me because it's the one time he wasn't here to stop you." That landed. For the first time, I saw something crack behind her eyes. Not sadness. Not remorse. Just the stunned realization that the daughter she dismissed as a flaky dreamer had just outmaneuvered them all. I want you off my land, I said. Now. Marcus, somehow still thinking he had a card to play, mumbled. We can talk about a settlement. There is no settlement. There is no debt. There is just you, your ego, and the humiliating fact that your little sister outearned you in the middle of a cornfield. I pointed to the driveway. Go. My Aunt Patricia, who had barely said a word the entire day, gently grabbed Marcus's arm and pulled him toward the car. He didn't fight it. My mother lingered. Sophie. I never meant for it to go this far. I just stared at her. Yes, you did. And then I shut the door. Locked it. And exhaled for the first time in 6 years. I stood in that quiet kitchen for a long time after they left. Just me, the hum of the refrigerator, and the view out the window, the greenhouse domes gleaming in the morning sun like little cathedrals of revenge. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just breathed. Then I walked out into the fields. It was planting season, and the crew was already hard at work, my people, the ones who'd stuck with me through floods, blight, supply chain hell, and one very memorable summer where a deer broke into greenhouse 3 and ate $18,000 worth of edible orchids. Hey boss! Arturo called out from the north beds, grinning. Everything good? I gave him a thumbs up. Better than good. The vultures flew away. He nodded like he already knew. These folks had seen the writing on the wall weeks ago when I warned them about the fake foreclosure. I kept them in the loop, not because I had to, but because I trusted them. This place didn't run on one woman's vision alone. It ran on sweat, dirt, loyalty, and a shared commitment to excellence. After lunch, I sat down in my office and opened my inbox. There were already emails from chefs in New York and Boston. Apparently, word was spreading. One said, "Heard some suits tried to snatch your land. Let me know if I need to write a character reference, or, send my lawyer." Another, "Sophie, I don't know what's happening over there, but if your tomatoes get any sweeter, I'm going to propose to one." And then the one that changed everything. "We're working on a piece for the NYT food section. Interested in a story about quiet power in the world of farm to table?" Now, for 6 years, I deliberately kept my farm under the radar. No press, no signage on the road, not even a damn Instagram account. Part of it was client discretion. My chefs liked their sourcing secret. But part of it was self-protection. I didn't want the scrutiny, didn't want the attention, and definitely didn't want to give my family one more reason to meddle. But after Friday, I was done hiding. I called the journalists back within the hour. "Let's talk," I said. That weekend, I hired a publicist, Claire, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who once turned a goat cheese startup into a household name. She nearly fell out of her chair when she saw my client list. "You know half of New York would sell their left kidney to be on your supplier sheet, right?" I laughed. "I figured." She got to work fast. Over the next few weeks, photographers showed up. Journalists toured the greenhouses. I gave interviews in muddy boots and flannel, explaining crop rotation like it was an art form. I even let a drone film my golden beet beds at sunrise. 3 months later, the feature dropped in the New York Times. Front page of the food section. Full spread. Photos of my team. Quotes from chefs calling my produce sacred and transformative. One of them said my rainbow carrots made him cry. The headline? "The hidden queen of high-end produce." It was surreal. The day it went live, my website crashed. I had 742 emails in 2 hours. Chefs, grocery buyers, influencers, even a freaking Netflix producer who wanted to talk about a docuseries. And then, right after lunch, I got a small, plain envelope in the mail. No return address. Just my name in Marcus's handwriting. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper. Typed, of course, because Marcus was incapable of handwriting anything longer than a birthday card without turning it into a legal document. It read, "Sophie, I owe you an apology. Not a legal one. My attorney has advised against that, but a personal one. I believed what Mom told me. I never questioned it. I never asked you directly. I never visited the farm. I assumed the worst. That's on me. What you've built is extraordinary." I read the article. I looked up the photos. I even called one of your chefs. He told me your purple garlic is the best he's ever tasted. I thought I understood success. You redefined it. I don't expect forgiveness. But I wanted you to know, I see it now. Dad was right about you. I wish I'd realized it sooner. Your brother, whether you want me or not. Marcus. I read it 3 times. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I genuinely didn't know what else to do with the flood of emotions crashing into my chest. Anger. Sadness. Vindication. Maybe even a sliver of something dangerously close to hope. I set the letter aside and sat for a while. Thought about Dad. About how he would have reacted to all of this. He would have smiled. He always said Marcus was smart, but too certain. Said I was the stubborn one, but the kind who could move mountains if I picked the right one. Well, here we were. That night I sat at my desk and wrote back. Marcus. You tried to take my farm. You came to my door not to talk, but to bulldoze. You assumed failure because it fit the story you needed to believe. And when Mom weaponized grief to justify control, you became her enforcer. But you also admitted you were wrong. And that matters. I'm not ready to forgive you. Not yet. But I'm open to something else. If you want a relationship with me again, you'll have to earn it. That starts by showing up, not with an agenda, not with assumptions, but with humility. Come see the farm. Really see it. Talk to my team. Listen before you speak. Then we'll talk. Your sister, whether you deserve me or not. Sophie. I mailed it the next morning. Didn't hear back for a week. Then, on the following Saturday, a black SUV rolled up the gravel path right as the crew was finishing morning harvest. Marcus stepped out, not in a suit this time, but jeans and boots. Still too clean, but at least they were boots. He looked around, hands in his pockets. I didn't realize, he said softly, any of it. I handed him a pair of gloves. You want to learn, you'll do it with dirt on your hands. He looked at the gloves like they might bite him. But he put them on. By noon, he was helping Arturo sort heirloom tomatoes and asking questions about soil pH. By dusk, he was sitting on the porch drinking lemonade, covered in sweat, his dress shirt rolled up and stained with actual work. It was a start. And for the first time in years, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we weren't on opposite sides anymore. Marcus came back the next weekend. And the one after that. Each time, a little less lawyer, a little more human. By the 4th visit, he stopped asking questions that sounded like cross-examinations and started listening, actually listening, when Arturo explained composting strategies or when Nora, my seed specialist, walked him through our heirloom squash propagation like it was her doctoral thesis. He helped install netting to keep out birds. Sorted garlic bulbs in the drying shed. Got stung by a bee and didn't sue anyone, which I took as progress. Then one day he showed up with a tray of coffee and said, "Okay. So explain microgreens to me like I'm 5. We all stared at him like he just offered to milk a goat with his teeth. But he meant it. That afternoon, I saw him crouched next to one of the interns, examining radish microgreens like they were holy scripture. He asked how we measured growth, how we packed orders, how we timed harvests. You know, he said quietly as we walked the backfield later. I thought law would make me feel more important, accomplished. But this place? He looked out across the rows. This place feels like something. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I didn't need to. 2 weeks later, he surprised me again. He brought Mom. I nearly told him to turn the car around. But he held up both hands. She asked? I didn't force her. You can say no. I considered it. Hard. But then I saw her, standing behind the passenger door, holding something. It was Dad's old seed satchel. She looked smaller than I remembered. Older, too. Grayer. Like all the smug energy she used to carry had been drained and replaced with uncertainty. She stepped toward me. I wanted to see what he helped build. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just opened the gate and walked ahead, giving her the chance to follow if she dared. She did. She didn't speak much. Just looked. Eyes darting from greenhouse to greenhouse, from planting beds to processing shed, taking in the operation she tried to reduce to playing in the dirt. When she finally spoke, we were in the climate pod where I grew saffron crocuses. She whispered, "He would have been proud of you." I turned to her, arms crossed. He was proud. You just couldn't handle it. She nodded. Didn't argue. I was scared. She admitted. You were always so determined to do it your way. And when your father backed you, I thought he was choosing you over the rest of us. Over me. He was choosing me. I said, voice steady. Because I was right. She winced. But again, she didn't argue. She placed the seed satchel gently on my work table. It's yours. I figured you should have it. Then she looked around the room again. I'll go now. I didn't stop her. But I also didn't say goodbye. Later that evening, Marcus lingered behind. We were watching the sunset over the west field. She's not perfect, he said. But she showed up. For once, I replied. He nodded. Maybe that's the first thing. Not the last. We watched in silence. The sky turned gold, then lavender. The scent of warm soil drifted up as the day wound down. You think Dad ever imagined all this? He asked. Every day. Because he did. And now the world did too. 3 months after the New York Times piece ran, my farm had more media requests than I had heirloom beet varieties, and that's saying something. I turned down half of them. I didn't need to be famous. I just needed to be undeniable. And I was. The Michelin-starred chefs doubled down. Half of them upped their orders. One sent me a handwritten thank you note saying, "You're the only reason my risotto gets standing ovations." Restaurants that had ignored my emails years ago were now begging to be waitlisted. I even got an email from a Vegas casino wanting to collaborate on a greenhouse installation for some rooftop garden concept. I politely declined. I wasn't building a brand empire, I was protecting a legacy. My farm had always been about proving something. To myself. To the industry. And yeah, if I'm being honest, to a family that bet against me from day one. But now, it wasn't about proving anything. It was about honoring the dream that started the day my father handed me that check and said, "Build something they'll never understand until it's too big to ignore." And I had. Marcus kept showing up. Every Saturday without fail. He still didn't know the difference between purple shiso and red amaranth, but he tried. And maybe trying was enough for now. Eventually, we even joked again. He called himself my part-time farmhand/public relations liability. I let him say it. He'd earned a few jokes after hauling compost in July heat without passing out. He didn't ask for forgiveness again. But he kept showing up. One night, after a long harvest day, he handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a certified letter retracting the original foreclosure claim with prejudice, along with a personal note. "I took the first step in trying to destroy what you built. This is me taking the first step in making sure you never have to worry about it again." It was small. But it mattered. As for my mother? She stayed quiet. Respectfully distant. Every now and then I'd get a text. Neutral things. The Times piece was well written. Marcus says the cherry tomatoes are sweeter this year. Patricia wants to know where to buy those microgreens you grow. I answered when I wanted to. Ignored her when I didn't. Set my boundaries like I set my fences, firm, visible, and non-negotiable. And the world kept turning. One morning, I walked out to the fields before sunrise. The dew was still clinging to the leaves, and the light was soft, pink gold over rows of plants that weren't just food, they were the quiet, growing proof that a life doesn't have to look like anyone else's version of success to be successful. I pulled out Dad's old seed satchel, now restored, cleaned, and still smelling faintly of tobacco and thyme, and walked the beds with it over my shoulder. This farm was never supposed to work. Not according to the banks. Not according to my family. Not even, in the darkest early days, according to me. But it did. Because I made it work. With grit. With failure. With sunburns and frostbite and harvests ruined by hail and hope. They tried to seize it for a fake $47,000 debt. The county assessor found a $6 million agricultural operation supplying the most elite kitchens in America. They called me foolish. They called me rebellious. They called me a failure. But you know what the chefs call me now? Essential. And that's the part no one can take.